Hold on to your hats and prepare for a presidential plunge into the world of scandals, secrets, and downright strangeness. From wild affairs to peculiar hobbies, these commanders-in-chief were anything but ordinary. Brace yourselves, folks, because we are about to unleash the untold tales of the weird and wacky United States presidents. Okay, let's kick things off starting with our lanky leader, Abraham Lincoln. Before he took on the helm of the 16th president, Lincoln dabbled in an entirely different career path. He was a licensed bartender. That's right, he knew how to shake things up and serve a mean drink before he made history. Can you imagine walking into a tavern and seeing Lincoln behind a bar, gracefully pouring drinks and sharing political anecdotes? Did you know that in 1861, the King of Siam, which is modern-day Thailand, made an unusual offer to President Abraham Lincoln? The king wanted to present Lincoln with multiple pairs of young elephants. These elephants were intended to be used as beasts of burden alongside the military during the Civil War. However, Lincoln politely declined the offer and chose a different approach. Instead of relying on elephants, he opted to harness the power of steam for military purposes. Now let's delve into an intriguing aspect of Lincoln's time in the office. First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln, it is said, explored the mystical realm. She supposedly invited mediums into the White House to conduct meetings, attempting to communicate with departed spirits. While there isn't concrete evidence of Lincoln himself participating in these supernatural gatherings, there are murmurs suggesting that he may have attended a few. It is surprising to think that beneath Lincoln's wise and logical demeanor, there might have been a hint of fascination with the secret. Moving forward, in the 1800s, during a time when scientific knowledge was still developing, there were instances where people's imagination soared. Even John Quincy Adams, the commander-in-chief at that time, was not immune to the allure of extraordinary ideas. Surprisingly, he approved a proposed expedition to explore the center of the Earth. Instead of focusing on space exploration, Adams directed his attention to delving into the depths of our own planet, a remarkable effort indeed. However, let's pause for a moment before we get carried away with geological tools. This was not merely a fight of fancy. John Quincy Adams was genuinely serious about embarking on a fantastical journey. He gave his official approval as the President of the United States, causing quite a stir in the headlines of that era. Unfortunately, fate intervened and the expedition never came to fulfillment. But worry not, curious readers, stay with us to learn what happens when a president clinches to power. Now let's explore another intriguing aspect of Adams' life. An intriguing secret that might give you a pause before taking a dip in the water. Picture the calm beauty of the Potomac River, a hazy morning ambience, and the president preparing to plunge into an unconventional manner. That's right, John Quincy Adams was no stranger to skinny dipping. It may sound surprising, but such activities were relatively common during the 1800s. So the next time you feel inclined to shed your limitations and embrace nature, remember that you're channeling your inner John Quincy Adams. Just be sure to check for any unsuspecting onlookers to avoid any modern-day controversies. Drumroll please, it is time for none other than FDR himself. In the year 1933, while the world was still trying to figure out how to spell equality, our 32nd president was already making waves. He decided to break the glass ceiling by naming Frances Perkins as a Secretary of Labor, becoming the first president to do so. Hats off to FDR for recognizing that women are just as capable of calling the shots. But hold your horses, ready yourself for a fashion flashback. Did you know that Franklin Roosevelt sported dresses during his childhood? Yep. While today we debate over non-gender specific clothing, FDR parents dressed him in the finest dresses. As gender-specific clothing didn't even exist until World War I. Now let's talk about America's 8th president, Martin Van Buren. There were 7 presidents before Van Buren who had the honor of being born in the United States. But when it was Van Buren's turn, he snatched the title of being the first president to actually be born stateside. Now you might be thinking, so what? the United States wasn't even founded until 1776. Well, my friend, facts are facts, and Van Buren proudly takes the crown for being the inaugural domestically born president. It is like he kicked off a president homegrown revolution. But wait, there is more. Did you know that Martin Van Buren played a critical role in the popularity of the phrase "okay"? Yup, you heard me right. The origins of "okay" are shrouded in mystery, with theories ranging from Native American language to sub-Saharan African dialects. Yet one thing is sure, Van Buren took the simple expression and ran with it. They called him Old Kinderhook, named after the New York town he hailed from, and during his 1840 election campaign, supporters would proudly wave signs saying "okay" and chant with wild abandon. Van Buren became the "okay" champion, transferring the simple phrase into a symbol of presidential pizzazz. On to the next fact. Have you ever wondered if presidents have their own sports? Apparently, Hoover took fitness to a new level. His physician, clearly feeling creative, decided to invent a sport just for him. Let me introduce you to the wonderfully bizarre sport known as Hoover Ball. A delightful fusion of tennis and volleyball, where the player tosses around a hefty medicine ball. And guess what? Even today, in the charming town of West Branch, Loa Hoover Ball is played competitively. Moreover, Wimbledon. Now let's shift gears and explore the enigmatic personality of Mr. Hoover. It seems he had a flair for the dramatic, or maybe he was just exceptionally good at playing hide-and-seek. You see, Herbert Hoover had an unusual demand. He didn't want his staff to see him, and he didn't want to see them either. Talk about being a diva. This peculiar role led to quite the charade within the White House. Can you imagine the scene? Staff members scrambling to find hiding spots, desperately piling into closets or crouching behind bushes. To avoid catching a glimpse of their elusive president, it's like a real-life game of presidential peekaboo. Now imagine strolling past the White House and stumbling upon a pair of grizzly bear cubs frolicking on the front lawn. Well, that's exactly what happened during Jefferson's presidency. He received this wild gifts and, for a brief period, kept them in a cage for all the marvel. But the bears grew, so did the potential danger. Eventually, Jefferson decided it was wiser to bid them farewell, giving them to a museum. After all, it's probably not the best idea to have bear-like companions roaming around the corridors of power. Hold on, that's not all. Thomas Jefferson, known for his intellectual prowess, also had an eccentric taste in bedroom arrangements. At his beloved estate, Monticello, he squeezed his bed into a tiny corner, leaving absolutely no room at the foot or head. It was like a comically cramped hideaway, as if his bed had been tucked into a nook just for a good laugh. This peculiar design choice had been attributed to Jefferson, making him the pioneer of the corner bed phenomenon. Who knew that even in sleep, Jefferson sought out unusual experiences? Now let's talk about a curious case of presidential synchronicity. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, despite their political rivalry, maintained a certain friendship. But fate had a rather iconic twist in store for them. On their deathbed, both men unknowingly breathed the last air on the exact same day. Adams' final words were an echo of their rivalry as he whispered, "Thomas Jefferson still survives." Little did he know that his rival had actually departed this world a few hours earlier. Talk about a suspenseful cliffhanger. Now let's take a wild ride through the wacky universe of Ulysses S. Grant. Imagine a fearless president, a majestic horse, and the need for speed. Ulysses S. Grant wasn't just a master of politics, he was also a skilled horseback rider. But even the most skilled riders can sometimes let their confidence gallop ahead of them. During this time in the presidential seat, Grant's need for speed got the better of him not once, but twice. Yes, this man was arrested for speeding, and not in the modern automobile, but on a horse. Apparently, Grant's horse and buggy were moving at such a furious pace that the local law enforcement had to rein him in. And guess what? The second time he was stopped, one courageous police officer decided to take the bull by the horns and arrest the commander-in-chief himself. Now let's shift gears into a more peculiar fact about the good old Ulysses. You know how important a middle initial can be. It's like a badge of honor, a symbol of distinction. But for Grant, the middle initial was as empty as a politician's promise during campaign season. Turns out the letter S had absolutely no meaning. Nada. It was just a happy accident. Or should I say, an unhappy typo in his application to West Point. As we finish this video, we have an exciting challenge for you. Can you find which face matches the money? The mysterious Herbert Hoover appeared on the US currency. Use your detective skills and take a guess at which bill shows the hard-to-find president. Comment your guesses down below.